Hey everybody, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and before we get to the review, I'd just like to tell you that I do have a Patreon account, and if you like my content, please consider throwing me even a small donation of $1,000. It will go a long way in helping to support my luxurious lifestyle. Let's get to it. The Binding of Isaac was first released back in 2011 for Windows, OS X, and Linux, but has since been updated and improved upon with the Rebirth release, also now available on the PlayStation Vita, Wii U, PlayStation 4, Nintendo 3DS, and Xbox One. There may be some other systems I missed, I don't really know. I've chosen to review the Rebirth version of the game as I consider it the most enjoyable to play, with modernized graphics, widescreen support, scrolling rooms, and more. And since we're on the topic, let's discuss how Rebirth fares as a PC title. Well, it's got 1920 by 1080 resolution, possibly higher, widescreen, and very few other options, but that's okay because it's a pretty simple 2D game. 2D graphics really don't benefit from a lot of options, as most of the graphics options that you see in modern games are designed for 3D polygons. One thing to note is that the game runs in OpenGL as opposed to DirectX, so that means that some of the programs that you have running in the background that record gameplay, for example, may not be compatible with it. The graphics in Binding of Isaac Rebirth are uniquely fun and cartoony, yet have a sort of dark and disturbing aesthetic to them. Now, we could argue that this is based on the darker side of a young boy's imagination, but it's not quite spelled out that way, but that's the way I like to think about it. You can see poop and flies and nastiness and just all sorts of grotesque, dirty, filthy, gross things in the game, and yet they're presented in sort of this fun, cheery, cartoony aesthetic. I like it, I don't know why, but I do. The music in Binding of Isaac is superb for this type of game, and that is to say, I never got tired of hearing it, even though I've played through the game dozens and dozens of times, and that's saying a lot. The sound effects are excellent as well. Nothing in the game gets annoying for me, not even the endless stream of tear bullets you're shooting. And I like how the sound effects are as equally dark and grotesque as the visuals, especially the sounds of enemies being hit, dying, and all that other good stuff. Some of the effects in the game just sound gross, and I think they're supposed to, and that's good. And as for the story in The Binding of Isaac, it's pretty interesting because The Binding of Isaac is itself the story. The story's in the title. You see, in the Bible, God called upon Abraham to kill his own son, and his son was named Isaac. Isaac was bound upon an altar, and thus we have the title Binding of Isaac. Isaac ultimately, however, was not killed in that story. In The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, Isaac's mother plays as a sort of Abraham role, believing that God has called her to kill her own son. However, the game presents it as her kind of being crazy. I think that's the impression you're supposed to get.
Your son has become corrupted by sin. He needs to be saved. I will do my best to save him, my lord.
The story is about Isaac trying to escape his mother, although it could be argued that the story is Isaac's dark imagination based on his difficult and traumatic experience with his mother going kind of crazy. I think much of the story is left to your imagination, but that's my interpretation of the supernatural events in the story, that they essentially aren't really happening. It's just all in Isaac's imagination. It's his way of coping with the traumatic experience he's going through. The game elements seem to also represent what Isaac went through. Think about it. The poop in the game represents Isaac being locked away, and he's unable to access a bathroom, so, use your imagination, you can figure out what's going on there. The tears as a weapon represent his sadness and constant crying, since he's a young child being treated unfairly and very harshly. The flies are the flies that would invariably gather around in a room as filthy as Isaac's, based on the fact that, well, he has to use the room as a sort of bathroom, and I could go on, but I think you get how my interpretation works. In the gameplay department, at its heart, Binding of Isaac is a twin-stick shooter with roguelite elements. Yes, I said roguelite, L-I-T-E, because it's not a full roguelike game. The game features semi-random, procedurally generated rooms, enemies, and power-ups. Each run of the game will feature different map layouts, enemy placement, bosses, power-ups, and so on. Basic controls on the PC are WASD for movement and arrows for firing, so that means you can move and shoot in different directions simultaneously, and that's very important. You can drop bombs, use items, or activate reusable power-ups. You will be forced to make sacrifices in the game. For example, do you take damage to enter a new room for a possible power-up? Do you give up this power-up for another power-up? Do you sacrifice health for a power-up? You can unlock additional characters as well with different abilities, but honestly, Isaac is my favorite character, and he is, of course, the base character. As for criticisms, well, my biggest criticism and only real criticism of the game has to be a criticism that comes with all of these games, and that's the randomness. The recording of this particular playthrough may mislead you into thinking that the game is much easier than it is, because I got a ton of really awesome power-ups very early on. I was so lucky with power-ups and health pickups that I actually completed the game with ease. Or did I? Maybe there's more to the game I haven't discovered. Maybe there's a secret final boss or bosses. Who knows? But honestly, it depends on your run. I mean, basically, any power-up that increases the damage you do or the speed of your attack is really useful. Any power-up that gives you more health is really useful. Some of the other power-ups may not be very useful, and some of them may actually be a bit of a hindrance depending on your playstyle. Overall, Binding of Isaac Rebirth is a great game that's fun to play and offers potentially limitless replay value. It's the type of game you can play 100 times and still enjoy your 101st playthrough. It's also the type of game where you can get a really unlucky run where it's better to just give up and start over. In fact, some of the top players will often restart the game over and over again until they get a good set of early power-up drops. I really can't recommend this title enough. With the number of platforms it's available on, you're bound to have one or more systems you can play this on. While I love playing it on my PC, it's one of my favorite titles to play on the PS Vita simply for the fact that it's easy to pick up and play for short periods of time, controls really well, and is perfect for a portable handheld system. The game is worth a purchase even at the current full price of $14.99. Well, as always guys, I want to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to give me that small donation of $1,000 to my Patreon account, and I will see you guys in the next video game review. Well, finally done with that one. Oh shoot, forgot to turn off the audio.